Along a quiet rural road in Texas, a passing driver saw something unusual. Two small bobcat kittens beside the asphalt. One lay motionless, evidently injured, while the other remained steadfast by its side, refusing to leave it alone. The little one stood as if on guard, tenderly resting its head on its brother's body in a clear display of protection. Wildlife veterinarian Dr. Emily Carter was immediately called to the scene. She arrived just in time. The situation was clear. The healthy kitten was not only protecting its brother, but seemed to be asking for help with its mere presence. With utmost care, the doctor picked up both cubs and quickly took them to her clinic. Thus began the extraordinary story of Guardian and its brother, two brave lynxes, whose bond not only saved a life, but left an indelible mark on everyone who met them. That morning, the sun cast long shadows over Highway 287, about 30 kilometers from Amarillo. Margaret Weifeld, a retired teacher about 70 years old, was driving her old Ford pickup toward the supermarket. As she traveled down the road, something caught her attention, a small figure at the edge of the path. At first, she thought it was another roadkill animal, something unfortunately common on those rural routes. But as she approached, she noticed movement. She slowed down and stopped on the shoulder, feeling her heart begin to beat strongly. Through the dusty windshield, she could distinguish two small figures on the gravel. One of the kittens remained motionless, while the other walked in desperate circles around it, its tawny fur gleaming under the dawn light. "Oh, Lord," whispered Margaret, parking and taking out her phone with trembling hands. She had lived her entire life in that area and knew she shouldn't approach wild animals, especially predators like lynxes. But she couldn't ignore what she was seeing. They weren't simply animals. They were babies. And what moved her most was seeing how the healthy lynx lay down next to its brother, covering it with its small body, pushing it occasionally with its snout, as if trying to wake it up. When an 18-wheeler passed nearby, the kitten crouched down, protecting its brother from the wind and debris. Margaret called information and, after several transfers, managed to contact the wildlife clinic of Dr. Emily Carter in Canyon, about 45 minutes away. "There are two baby lynxes on Highway 287, she explained with a trembling voice. "One is badly hurt, maybe hit by a car. The other won't leave its side. I've never seen anything like it, doctor. That little one is trying to protect its brother." Dr. Carter, a veterinarian specializing in wildlife with more than 15 years of experience, felt the urgency in the woman's voice. Without hesitation, she took her emergency equipment. "Can you stay there so no one bothers them?" "I'm on my way," she asked. "I'm not moving," Margaret responded firmly. "These babies need help." During the next 40 minutes, Margaret remained with the lynxes, her truck's emergency lights blinking. Several drivers slowed down as they passed, and a state trooper stopped to ask questions. After hearing the situation, he stayed with her until the veterinarian arrived. "I've never seen a lynx do that," said Officer Daniel Reeves, observing through his binoculars. "Usually they're solitary creatures. Even siblings separate early. These two are different. That little one hasn't moved more than a few centimeters from its brother," Margaret responded softly. "It keeps licking its face as if trying to comfort it." Finally, Dr. Carter's white pickup appeared on the horizon. Margaret and the officer felt great relief. Emily, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and steady hands, assessed the scene from afar before slowly approaching with a carrier and thick gloves. "Hello, little ones," she said with a soft voice as she approached. The healthy kitten raised its head. Its golden eyes shone with a mixture of fear and determination. It let out a slight hiss, but didn't flee. Instead, it pressed its body more firmly against that of its injured brother. "Everything's okay, sweetheart," the veterinarian whispered calmly. "I'm here to help." What happened next was etched in the memory of everyone present. It was a scene none would ever forget. As Emily carefully approached the injured kitten, the little one that was still healthy didn't attack or flee. Instead, it made a strange sound that wasn't exactly a meow or a cry, but an unmistakable plea. It looked directly at Emily, then at its brother and back at her again, as if saying, "Please help us." Emily carefully picked up the injured kitten, quickly examining it. The little one was unconscious but breathing. It had an obviously fractured hind leg and some scrapes from the asphalt. As she placed it in the carrier, the other kitten watched every movement with total attention. "Come on, brave one," Emily said to the second kitten, extending her hand. "You're coming too. I promise I'll take care of both of you." Surprisingly, the healthy kitten let itself be picked up without resistance and immediately tried to crawl toward its brother inside the carrier. Emily accommodated them together, and the healthy one immediately curled around the injured one, resuming its protective position. "I've never seen anything like this," commented Officer Reeves, shaking his head in amazement. "Neither have I," admitted Emily, securing the carrier inside her truck, "and I've been doing this for 15 years. Margaret, with tears on her cheeks, approached. "Will you call me to tell me how they are?" "Of course," Emily promised, taking her number. "You probably saved their lives by calling us." The trip back to the clinic was tense. Emily could hear the healthy kitten making soft squeaks toward its brother, which led her to accelerate a bit more. Back at the clinic, she took both directly to the examination room. The injured one, a male, had a fractured tibia, multiple scrapes, and a mild concussion. The female, on the other hand, had no physical injuries, but was severely dehydrated and underweight. Both were about 4 months old, just the age when lynxes begin to separate in nature. But these two clearly weren't typical lynxes. "You're not typical, are you?" murmured Emily as she prepared the male for surgery. The female didn't take her eyes off him, her intense yellow eyes fixed on each of his movements. When she had to separate them to operate on the male, the little female began to emit a sharp lament, so heartbreaking that it resonated throughout the clinic. Jack Morrison, the young recently graduated assistant, stayed with the female, trying to calm her. "She won't eat," he told Emily an hour later. "She won't drink either. She just sits at the edge of the cage looking at the door." The surgery was a success. Emily managed to fix the fracture, sewed up the wounds, and administered antibiotics and painkillers. When she brought the kitten back to its cage, still under the effects of anesthesia, the female ran toward him immediately. She sniffed him desperately, and then curled up next to his body, purring loudly. "It was at that moment," Emily would say later, "when I knew these two weren't just siblings. They were bonded in a way I had never seen in wild animals." During the following days, the male, whom Jack began calling Brave, and the female, baptized as Guardian, recovered slowly. Guardian never left her brother's side except to eat or use the litter box, and even then she cried if she couldn't return quickly to him. 3 days after the accident, Brave finally opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was his sister's face, and despite the pain, he began to purr instantly. Emily found herself spending more and more time with them, fascinated by the bond they shared. She had cared for hundreds of wild animals with the goal of returning them to their habitat, but these two presented a special case. "They're too humanized," she explained to Jack one night while watching the kittens play. Brave's leg was healing well. He was already beginning to put weight on it. Guardian, for her part, allowed herself to be handled without problems, something extremely unusual in a bobcat. She allowed us to touch her only to save her brother. That's not normal behavior, and Brave is already too comfortable with us too. Jack looked at her, reflecting for a moment. "So what do we do now?" Emily had been struggling with a difficult decision for days. Releasing the lynxes to the forest seemed cruel to her. They had lost their natural fear of humans, which could put them in danger, but sending them to a zoo or sanctuary also seemed unfair to her. It meant condemning them to live in cages for the rest of their lives. And then there was their bond, so strong, so unique, that she couldn't overlook it either. "I've been thinking," Emily said in a low voice. "I have about 10 hectares behind my house, completely fenced. I've rehabilitated other animals there before releasing them. What if I let them live there? Not as pets, but not exactly as wild animals either. As residents, they could have the freedom to roam with the security of the fence, access to food and shelter, a kind of balance between wild and safe." Jack smiled enthusiastically. "That's perfect. They have each other, space to be lynxes, but without running the risks of the outside world." With the decision made, Emily got to work. She reinforced the fence, built several shelters distributed throughout the terrain, and placed cameras to be able to monitor them as they grew. Margaret Weifeld, who had called weekly to ask about the kittens, donated money to help with the costs. So did Officer Reeves, along with several other people who had been moved by knowing their story. The day Emily took Brave and Guardian to their new home was exciting and full of anxiety. She placed the carrier at the edge of the back porch and stepped back a few steps. Guardian came out first, cautiously exploring the new environment with her gaze. Then she emitted that same soft sound she had made the day of the accident. Brave came out after, still limping slightly. Although his leg had healed, he would always have a small limitation. They huddled next to each other for several minutes, silently observing their new home. Then Guardian advanced a few steps, looked back and waited. Brave followed her, and together they began to explore their territory. "They'll probably avoid the house," Emily told Jack, who had come to help. In a week they'll be completely wild again, just safe. But the lynxes had other plans. That same night, Emily woke up hearing a sound on her back porch. She looked out the window and saw them huddled together on the old porch swing. Guardian was tenderly grooming Brave's ears. From then on, every afternoon when the sun began to set, they returned to the porch. It was as if they were checking in, making sure Emily was still there. Months passed. The kittens grew and became majestic young adults. Their coats became thicker, their muscles more defined. They learned to hunt for themselves, and Emily found evidence of their prey throughout the property. However, they never lost their bond with each other or their curious trust in her. "They're wild," Emily explained to visitors who were surprised to see two lynxes resting peacefully on her porch. "They hunt, they roam, they do everything wild lynxes do. They've just chosen to do it here and have decided to include me in their territory." But the most impactful moment came on a cold December morning, almost a year after the accident. Emily was having her coffee on the porch when she heard a commotion near the back fence. She took her binoculars and saw Guardian facing a coyote that had somehow managed to get through it nearby. Brave was behind her, his bad leg making him slower and more vulnerable. Without thinking, Emily ran for her rifle and began heading toward them. But before she could even reach halfway across the terrain, she witnessed something amazing. Guardian, barely 2/3 the size of the coyote, stood firm, bristling her entire body to appear larger. Then she let out a wild cry, a heartbreaking shriek that Emily had never heard before. The coyote took a step forward, and Guardian lunged at him with such fierceness that the larger, stronger predator turned around and fled through the same hole through which he had entered. Guardian chased him to the fence, then without wasting time returned to her brother to check on him, just as she had done that first day on the road. When Emily reached them, both lynxes looked at her with an expression that could only be described as trust. They let her check them for injuries, though neither had any, and then followed her back home while she called to repair the damaged fence. "She protected him," Emily told Margaret over the phone that night, "just like on the road. I think she would die for him, and he would do the same for her." "You saved something special, Dr. Carter," Margaret responded with a soft voice. "Not just two lives, but a bond that many believe doesn't exist among wild animals." Over the years, Brave and Guardian became local celebrities. Wildlife photographers came to document them, researchers studied their unique bond, and local schools brought children to learn about conservation. The lynxes tolerated the attention with surprising grace, but disappeared among the trees when they had had enough. Emily never tried to domesticate them beyond what was necessary. She respected their wild nature while offering them security. They were never pets. They were something more, companions perhaps. Two wild souls who chose to share their lives with the human who saved them. In quiet afternoons, Emily would sit on the porch and watch them play, groom each other, or simply rest together watching the sunset. Guardian used to rest her head on Brave's back, just as she had done that day on the road. And sometimes, when the light was just right and the world seemed to stop, Emily swore they looked at her with something very much like gratitude in their wild yellow eyes. "They saved each other," she would whisper. "I just gave them the opportunity." The story of the lynx siblings spread beyond Texas, touching hearts around the world. It made many reconsider what they knew about wild animals, their capacity to love, to form deep bonds. Some scientists debated it. Was it instinct or something more that led Guardian to protect her injured brother? But for those who witnessed it, Margaret, Officer Reeves, Jack, and especially Emily, there was no doubt. Love exists in nature. It may not look like human love, but it's no less real or less powerful, and sometimes, if we're lucky, we can witness it and be part of its preservation. Years later, when Emily was invited to speak at veterinary congresses about wildlife rehabilitation, she always closed her presentations with the same words: "We think we're saving them, but sometimes they save us too." Brave and Guardian taught me that bonds between animals can be as strong as any human relationship. They showed me that courage comes in many forms. Sometimes it's a small lynx standing guard over its injured brother on a dangerous road. And other times it's having the wisdom to recognize something precious and do everything possible to protect it. Brave and Guardian lived the rest of their lives on Emily's property. They never separated, always together. Guardian never stopped watching over Brave, and Brave never stopped following his sister with complete trust. They remained wild, yes, but also connected to the humans who had recognized their bond and honored it. When Margaret Weifeld passed away at 82, her obituary mentioned many things: her 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and her volunteer work at the local library. But it also remembered the day she stopped on Highway 287 and refused to abandon two small injured lynxes. That act of compassion gave rise to a story that touched thousands of lives. Officer Reeves, now a captain, still tells the story to new recruits as an example that the duty to protect can extend beyond human citizens. Jack Morrison founded his own wildlife rehabilitation center, inspired by what he saw in Brave and Guardian. Emily continued caring for wildlife, but never found another pair like them. They remained unique, living witnesses to the mysteries of the natural world and the unlikely bonds that can form between the most unexpected souls. On her porch, the old swing still creaks with the wind. And sometimes on silent mornings, Emily still expects to see two figures huddled together, one wrapped protectively over the other, wild hearts beating in unison, proof that love knows no boundaries of species, instinct, or even between the wild and the civilized. The story of the lynxes reminds us that even in a harsh world, acts of love and loyalty flourish in the most unexpected places, like on a dusty Texas road, where a small guardian angel covered in fur refused to abandon the one it loved most. It's a reminder that we all have the capacity to be guardians, and that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion are the ones that end up having the greatest impact. Because in the end, it doesn't matter if we fully understand the bond between Brave and Guardian. What matters is that we recognized it, respected it, and gave them the space for it to flourish. And in doing so, we demonstrated that the best of humanity can also be that being guardians of what truly matters.